Fame and wealth, that's what I'm after. Bucks and praise are what I crave. How I get 'em hardly matters. For these things I'll be your slave. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to the channel if you haven't been here before. This is a follow-up co-hosty video about Garbaugust. So there's several different strands to Garbaugust. I'll explain quickly what it is in case you've never heard of it. It's a book event that's invented by Ollie from Ollie. Check out his channel, it's amazing. And I'm sure you are watching Ollie's channel, but you know, it's the right thing to say. You may not be. He invented Garbaugust to celebrate the kind of books that don't get celebrated, basically. It can all be summed up like that. So critics rave about certain books, certain types of books. Literary awards get given to certain kinds of books. And there's a whole load of books that never get any reward or praise or anything like that. So that's kind of where these books sit. So they're books for the mass market. They're books that are exploiting a particular trend or fame from an author or a TV show or a film franchise or a comic franchise or a game. One of the things I'm reading for Garbaugust is a Warhammer novel. I've never read one of those before, but I'm doing that for the event. And I've noticed today, I didn't buy them, but I could have bought some more books for Garbaugust that were spin-offs of some computer games. I can't remember what games they were, but you know, there's loads and loads of spin-off novels from games from Nintendo, but also from PlayStation and Xbox as well. So there's tons of stuff out there that wouldn't be critically applauded and certainly not awarded with awards. So that's kind of what Garbaugust is all about. Praising stuff that could actually be good, but is seen as trash by the literary world. There's several strands, as I said, and some of us are doing like a themed video. So that's what this is. This is a themed video, and this is all about celebrities writing books. So if you get talking to someone about celebrities writing books, then most of the time you'll hear someone say, yeah, but they don't write them, someone else writes them. And that's definitely true for a lot of books. And I've done a little bit of research, not tons of research, but a little bit of research in this. And I think that's definitely true for some of the politicians that have written their books and some of the sort of non-fiction memoir type books. A lot of those seem to be ghost-written. And people like Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and even Michelle Obama's book and Richard Branson's book. There's a bunch of books that were memoirs that were written with other people, but they basically dictated to them and they made it sound like they made it read better as a book. So there are those kind of books, and famously I remember when Naomi Campbell put out a book, was it called Swan or something, and nobody believed that she'd written it, and there wasn't a writer involved, and there is a sense that she didn't write it. But I think when it gets extended to anybody that's a celebrity, I think it's a little bit unfair. So there's definitely a ghostwriting process, and there's definitely a ghostwriting career out there for people who write and don't get credit for it. One of the first books I ever read as a boy was the novelization of Star Wars, and it says on the cover that George Lucas wrote it, and he didn't. Alan Dean Foster wrote it, and Alan Dean Foster, there's a load of Alan Dean Foster books over there, I'm not going to get them. Alan Dean Foster is an author that's made a career out of writing novelizations. He's written tons of novelizations, and he's also written loads of other things, and he's a good writer. But clearly George Lucas had an agreement with him that he wouldn't get his name on the cover, and it could be because they thought it would sell more copies, I don't know, but that's definitely ghostwritten. So that was a bit of a shock. I discovered that recently. That is a thing, that not always, celebrities don't always write what it says on the book cover. But as I'm saying, I don't think it's a fair assumption to say that everybody does. And I think the majority I've got in front of me, possible one exception. I've got, how many? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've got about 15 books that I'm going to talk about. I think it may be one that I would be quite happy to believe she didn't write. But the thing is, my general point here is a lot of these people have writing in their career that have made them a celebrity. So sometimes they're writer-directors, so like auteur kind of directors. Sometimes they're comedians, or they're the sort of people that have had a not necessarily comedy writing career, but there's writing in their job somewhere. You can see it. So I think there's sort of that element, and yeah, there's other things that we'll get to it in a minute, but there's other things I just believe that some musicians did write their own memoir, but we'll get there in a second. So I'm just going to look at this and look at it in a kind of a sensible, mature way, I think, and not just assume that everybody is pretending they've written their book. Because I want to make another point, and that's that a lot of people don't like people being too talented. If there's a celebrity that does more than one thing, everyone says, well, that's just stupid, or that's crap, or oh, they're really bad at that, or whatever. They don't like people being good at more than one thing. And I think it's a bit of a shame. And I was saying earlier on a live stream that somebody like Bill Mooney, I don't know if you know Bill Mooney, but he was really famous as a child actor. So he became really famous as Will Robinson in the original Lost in Space, the black and white Lost in Space. So that was how he was first made famous. And then he had this really big role in Babylon 5 as well. He played Lanier, and he was awesome in that. I love Babylon 5, so he was really good in that. But by the time he was in Babylon 5, he'd built a studio, and he'd had a mini kind of musical career, and he plays loads of instruments. He plays guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and accordion, and harmonica. He plays all sorts of things. He's a very talented musician. He's a good singer and a good songwriter, and I've got some of his albums. And he's got his own studio and does it himself. And it's his little kind of project, because it clearly isn't his main income, because he's an actor. But I do think it's very awesome that he does both those things, and they sit next to each other in his career. And not a lot of people know necessarily about his music, but he clearly sells some stuff, because he's got his own label as well. I think it's pretty cool, and I genuinely find him quite inspirational, because I'd like to have more than one thing that I do. So you know, I found him quite an inspiration well before I was writing prose, writing novels and short stories and stuff. So I meant the inspirational thing in a general sense, because I've been a musician for a long time, but I've only been writing for a little while. But I do think it's quite inspirational when someone is really good at more than one thing. I think it's cool. I think it's something to praise and something to applaud and something to commend, rather than something to condemn and just not believe that they could be any good and just be really cynical and negative about it. So I do think that's a good thing to kind of think about, and maybe have a more positive mantra on other people's success, I think. So I think he's an example of someone that can do both things. And there are some people here that probably can do more than one thing, and, you know, we've got to let them in. We've got to let them into our hearts. So I'm going to start off with a guy that is very famous and very successful as a novelist, but he clearly started off as a comedian and comedy writer. He's probably more famous in the UK than he is anywhere else, but he's very famous in the UK, and some of his products might be famous in America and other places. So this guy's Ben Elton, and I've got Time and Time Again here, and I've got Dead Famous. This is a parody of reality shows, and this is his time travel novel. Incidentally, his mate, Stephen Fry, did a time travel one as well called Making History. I could have held that one up. And Hugh Laurie did, oh, they're all mates. Hugh Laurie also did a book called The Gun Seller. And I believe for the reasons I'm just about to talk about, Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry definitely wrote their books. And I think there's no doubt that Ben Elton wrote these books as well. And he's written tons now. He's written probably about 20 books or something. And these are very successful books. And his comedy is very successful. He co-wrote The Young Ones, which is a huge export, I think, and an absolute legendary program over here about 4 students. It's a very mad comedy. But he co-wrote that with Rick Mile. And he wrote Blackadder as well with Richard Curtis. And Blackadder, I think, is probably the best UK sitcom we've ever made. Ooh, that's a bit controversial. Somebody earlier was talking about Only Fools and Horses, and that is very clever. But I think Blackadder's probably my favourite UK one. I've got lots of favourite US sitcoms, But Ben Elton co-wrote Blackadder. And clearly, he's a writer. And I think that's the thing. If you're a writer of comedy, or a writer of scripts, then it's not a massive leap for someone to think, actually, I'm going to see what I'm like as a novelist. So I do think that they deserve to be believed when they say they've written their book. And these are apparently really good. So, Ben Elton. Similarly, in a similar world, because they work together to death and they know each other really well, and she's got very similar fame, very similar place in our hearts. Dawn French. Dawn French has written a few books now, and this is called Oh Dear Sylvia. And I actually bought this to do this video, but I'll probably read it. It might be more intended for women. I might not be the intended audience, but hey, why not? That's what Garbaugust is all about. So Dawn French is a female comedian who's very famous for her partnership with Jennifer Saunders. French and Saunders, quite important innovators for female comedians in this country during the 80s and that. And she was also the main character in The Vicar of Dibley, if you've seen that. You may have seen that. But anyway, very well-loved actress and comedian, and she's written a bunch of books. And again, she definitely wrote this, and I imagine I'm going to hear that voice that I'm familiar with from her style of writing in her sketches and stuff. I think I'm going to hear that in there. And I think it might be a little bit like Ruth Jones. I don't know if you know Ruth Jones, but she's written lots of books, and she wrote Gavin and Stacey. She wrote that, and she's written lots of novels as well. But again, these are celebrities. These are people that are known for other things. Another one, I've got Hitler's Canary by Sandy Toksvig. Sandy Toksvig is... sorry, I'm a bit distracted by Rosie. Shh! My cat's going meow for no reason. She's getting old. She does that. Like, every night she has this little bout of just going meow, meow. But she's an old little cat now. Anyway, Hitler's Canary by Sandy Toksvig. Sandy Toksvig is an interesting personality over here. She is a writer. She's written lots of plays, and she's been a writer for all her career, I think, but she's known more to us as a TV presenter for presenting the Great British Bake Off for quite a while. And she's been presenting QI, which is one of my favourite programmes. She presents QI, and I think she's extremely likeable. And I did get this because she'd written it, so I'm assuming this is going to be good. But I've noticed a couple of other books of hers amongst the bookshelves in shops and that, and clearly she's written a few. But again, Sandy Toksvig is a writer, so it's not that weird that she wrote a book, and it's probably good because she's a funny lady. This one's a little bit different because this is a memoir kind of book, but a very specific one, because Victoria Corrin, who again is famous as a TV presenter, she presented Only Connect, which is the hardest quiz on UK TV. It's ridiculously hard. And lots of friends, when I speak about Only Connect to my friends, they always say, oh yeah, I like to watch that because if I get one right, I feel really clever. So yeah, it's a hard quiz show to watch, to take part in. If you're watching this and you've been on Only Connect and answered some questions correctly, well done. Well done. That is awesome. But anyway, Victoria Corrin is clearly very clever, and she's very witty on the show. Although her wit is very, very academic wit. Sometimes she'll say something and you go, yeah, I think. And anyway, she's also very famously, if you know anything about her, you kind of end up knowing quite quickly that she's a really good poker player, and she won a very important championship, and it was kind of a big deal because she was already known, and she was a female in a very male-dominated world, and that's what this book is about. So she's also had a little bit more extra fame because she's now married to a comedian, David Mitchell, and David Mitchell was really awesome as well. I've got one of his books over there. So I think this is a bit different because it is a kind of memoir, but it's about a woman being in a male-dominated world. But I expect it's really witty. I couldn't wait to read this. I haven't brought down books from my loft that are written by comedians, and I've tried not to do that. But these are slightly different because they're not just kind of comedy routines put in a book. They're either that memoir or their novels, you know, with a story and all that. This little section of the video I'm going to finish with Richard Osman. So this book has been enormously popular. It's been a massive hit, and now he's done 3 others as well. There's 4 in this series of this elderly group of people that end up being detectives. And Richard Osman has been very, very, very successful as a novelist. And the thing is, it's not that... I don't know, I'm not that surprised, because he seems, when he's on TV, he's a TV presenter, and he's like in, I think he started his career as a producer of like behind the scenes of quiz shows, I think that's how he started. Interestingly enough, his brother was in Suede as well. But anyway, if for Suede fans, you might find that interesting. But Richard Osman is an incredibly likeable guy. When he's on TV, everybody loves him, and you know, he's always very witty. There's clearly a real intelligence behind what he's saying on TV, and it's not that weird that he's a good novelist. So I've got the first 3 books of this. I haven't read them yet, but again, this is another example, I think, of a celebrity that it's not that weird they're writing novels, and there's probably a lot of intelligence behind the text. So Richard Osman, well done, Richard Osman. You've done very well. So moving on to another kind of section I was going to talk about. Directors, film directors that have written stuff. So John Waters has written Lion Mouth, and recently Ollie from Criminology reviewed this and said it was brilliant. He said it was very John Waters, so if you know anything about his films, they tend to be quite underground, freaky, disgusting, edgy, and apparently this is like that. So I can't wait to read this. I'm definitely going to read this next month. But again, John Waters is not going to let someone else write his book. This is definitely going to be written from him, and apparently it's very distinctively him. So an interesting example here of a celebrity writing a novel. Again, very distinctive man. One of my favourite directors, David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg wrote Consumed. I'm pretty sure this is his only novel, but you know, in time that will become his first novel. And apparently, if you read the back, it does seem to be very David Cronenberg. And there's the man himself. Fascinating man. I freaked out when he appeared on Star Trek Discovery. I was like, oh my God, I got well excited. I said, that's David Cronenberg. So he does the occasional acting job. But he clearly wrote this novel, and I'm looking forward to reading this. I'm expecting to be disgusted by the contents of the book. And then another one that I didn't expect to see at all is Brian De Palma's book from the Hard Case Files series, Are Snakes Necessary? I don't know how to do this so you can't see the glare. Yeah, Brian De Palma and Susan Lehman. So this is a collaboration, but I find it quite fascinating that he's written this book. So Brian De Palma's famous for films like Angel Heart and Body... Oh, what's it called? The Kathleen Turner one. And... lots of others. Oh, he directed Carrie as well. He directed Carrie. There's loads of stuff he did that are really important. Oh, The Phantom of Paradise. I love that film. And there's a quote there from Martin Scorsese saying that he likes the book. So, yeah, fascinating stuff. But again, he's a writer. He's a writer-director. So it's not that weird that he decided to go into writing novels. So that's that kind of section of you know, sometimes you can find really interesting novels by... writer-directors as well. So then you've got this next section is a little bit different because these are books. These next 2 books are books I'd not normally buy, and I bought them for Garbaugust. And this is the book that I don't necessarily believe for sure. I'm happy to believe that she didn't write it. She may not have written it, or she may not have written it on her own. Sharon Osbourne's book Revenge. This was how much was it? I can't remember. It wasn't £1.99. I think it was £1 or something. I don't know. But I bought this for Garbaugust. But she may have written it. Again, I do think it's good to try and give them the benefit of the doubt unless you know otherwise. And, you know, I can imagine... I don't know, there's something about her that makes me think, well, she might have really enjoyed writing some steamy romance thing with some murder in it or something. If you know much about Sharon Osbourne, she's definitely a powerful woman who has controlled her career all the way through it. And she's been very much like a power play in a lot of situations for other rock artists and stuff. She's managed lots of people, and you know, she is the sort of person that might have had no qualms about setting up a team of people to write, but she's also one of those people that you imagine would get into the idea of writing something like this for fun as well. So I don't know. I don't know much about whether she wrote or not, but I'm happy to believe she didn't. I doubt that's true for any of those I'm going to talk about, but she may have written the whole thing anyway. But anyway, I've bought that for Garbaugust. Revenge by Sharon Osbourne. And then this is another one that I bought for Garbaugust, but I don't know, I've got a little bit of a soft spot for her. But Martina McCutcheon and the book The Mistress. This is really not my kind of book. But again, I think she probably loved that kind of stuff when she read that sort of stuff for years and thought, yeah, I could do that. And she may have gone through an editor that edited it to death, maybe. But why expect the negative? Why assume she can't write? You know, she's an intelligent woman. Maybe she could write, and maybe this is just her novel, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Maybe it's not going to be my style of novel, but I believe she wrote this. Someone's now looking it up to find out if she did. But anyway, that's my take on it. So a couple of musicians. So Dave Grohl recently released his memoir, that The Storyteller, which everybody loves. I haven't read it yet, but everybody loves this. Everybody's telling me to get it, and I now got it. And again, I think it's quite personalised. I think it's, you know, if someone helped him write it, I think the content is his. And maybe the wording of some of the sentences might be someone else's. I don't know. But again, I would rather believe that he wrote the entire thing. I don't know any different. But this is supposed to be really good. Another thing, this has really surprised me, because this is these are short stories by Steve Earle. Again, Steve Earle is a writer, and some of his writing, some of his songs do tell stories. It's the same as if Springsteen decided to write a novel. I wouldn't be surprised. It would be awesome, and it would be probably quite vivid, because some of his lyrics are really poetic and beautiful. Steve Earle's lyrics don't tend to be as poetic and you know, get those great lines like Springsteen does necessarily, but I absolutely believe that he could definitely write a short story collection. So Steve Earle, if you don't know stuff, then you might know Copperhead Road, maybe. That's probably his most famous one. Or Guitar Man. Is it Guitar Man? Guitar Town. Guitar Town. And Someday as well. Someday I'm going to... Yeah, the one about leaving small town. But yeah, Steve Earle. And then this is the actors, some actors and comedians. So this is an interesting one. So I bought this as a big Star Trek fan. I wanted to read Levi Burton's Aftermath. And again, I think Levi Burton's a very intelligent man. He's lived in the science fiction world for a long time, clearly because of Star Trek. He's had another career of encouraging people to read and teaching people to read on American TV. I am absolutely 99.9% certain that he wrote this book, and it's his creation. It's his little baby, and why not? And if it's good, that'd be awesome. There he is. There's Geordie LaForge himself. So, famously, the man who taught kids to read and played Geordie LaForge. This is a memoir, but Michael J. Fox, I don't know if he did this for someone else, but it's clearly going to be very personal. It's going to be all about his struggles. And I think, I don't know, it's almost an insult to assume that he didn't write this. And I'm sure it's really interesting. And I bought this second-hand. I couldn't resist it. It was a little bit more than I would have paid for a second-hand hardback, but I couldn't resist it, because I think it's very admirable the way he's coped with what's happened to him. So, this was a funny one. I found this and I couldn't believe it. I had to look it up to see if it definitely was the actor that I thought it was. And apparently he's written 2 books. So Princess Naughty and the Voodoo Cadillac is written by Fred Willard. So Fred Willard's a character actor. There's been a lot of comedy stuff. I first discovered him through Spinal Tap, because he does this amazing scene. He's a really good improviser, but he does this amazing scene as a sort of like an army sergeant kind of guy, letting them play on this army barracks. and his dialogue's amazing and all improvised and all that. Fred Willard, interesting actor, and he's apparently written 2 books, and this is a bit of a sort of B-movie type book. So I'm looking forward to reading this at some point. Have you read this? Did you know he wrote 2 books? I didn't. And then another one that really surprised me, I'm nearly at the end now. This one really surprised me, David McCullum. So David McCullum is most famous probably for The Man from U.N.C.L.E., but he's been in an American TV show lately for quite a while. He's had a long role in a big show that's on TV at the moment in America. But he's quite an old guy now. So he was with Robert Vaughn in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. He was also with Joanna Lumley in Sapphire and Steel. And he's also played the Invisible Man. So there was a 1970s British TV series called The Invisible Man about H.G. Wells' Invisible Man. It was a TV series and he played him. I remember that. And I remember that really affected me as a kid, actually. People never talk about that series. So that was David McCullum. And it's definitely the same guy because it's even got a quote here from Joanna Lumley. So yeah. And there he is, actually. There's the man himself. So yeah, I think this is like a crime thriller. So that's interesting. So, again, I believe he wrote it. Give the guy the benefit of the doubt. And then 2 more by comedians. So, Miles Jupp is a British comedian who's on TV quite a lot on panel games and stuff. And this is kind of an interesting one. This is a book about a teacher and some hot water he gets into. And it's like... I don't know. I don't really want to get too many spoilers about what the plot is, but it seems to be an observational comedy kind of thing about a situational thing with a teacher that gets worse and worse and worse. So I'm hoping it's going to be as funny as the film Election, which is, if you haven't seen the film Election, you should definitely see it. It's incredible. But we'll see if it's as good as that. I don't know. But history, Miles Jupp. I don't think his comedy's that, his stand-up comedy's that good, but I'm intrigued by this, so I got this. And it might be good. And again, I'm absolutely certain he wrote it. And I definitely think this guy wrote this. This is one of my favourite people. And I'm just finishing with this. So Bob Mortimer. So we know him in this country as part of Vic and Bob. But he has done a fair few appearances on panel games and stuff on his own now. And everyone can see how funny he is. And it's called The Satsuma Complex. And I think it's his first book. And I think it's probably amazing. I can't wait to read it. But again, he's a celebrity, but he's a comedian and he's a writer, clearly. So it's not that weird when they write their stuff. So, yeah, there's loads of stuff that I could potentially read for that element of Garbaugust. Tell me down below what novels you've read, novels more than memoirs, what novels you've read by celebrities that you've really enjoyed. I know there was some praise recently from somebody... Michael K. Vaughan, maybe? Or Greg? I can't remember. Somebody talking about Gene Hackman's book. Gene Hackman's Western. So, that was really cool. And I'd like to get hold of that at some point. So, anything like that. If you've read an interesting book by a celebrity, let me know below. Thanks for watching. Bye.